Split Fiction is the latest in an incredible lineup of compulsory co-op games from Hazelight Studio. From the moment it was announced, I knew it was going in my collection. My wife and I were playing It Takes Two when the game launched, so we waited until we finished a few months later and snatched it up. We cracked into it last fall and finished a week before we left for holiday break. What a marvelous present to us this game turned out to be. It's the most fun we've ever had gaming together, even if both of us found parts we couldn't complete ourselves. That's when we swapped controllers and lent each other our strengths. It honestly doesn't get more co-op than that. The highest compliment I can give this dev team is that it does not look like an Unreal 5 engine game. But it is! Hazelight used more traditional lighting methods and opted out of most of the other UE5 features that plague other games with poor optimization. That makes this a technical masterpiece built by humans with the engine as a tool, not a crutch. Something players have been begging for, and this is proof it can be done. This game both looks incredible and is a masterclass in optimization, and what they've done with it is nothing short of perfection. The massive spanning environments that you can see from so many different vantage points are mind-blowingly detailed. The worlds are almost entirely linear, but they feel sprawling because you can see where you're going and where you've been. It's a visual representation of your progress, and it's stunning. The juxtaposition between high-tech and fantasy medieval worlds was appropriately jarring and a testament to the creativity and skill of the devs. The backgrounds, textures, and character models in all their forms, the side characters and widely varying art styles across the levels and side stories. It's not only technically brilliant, it's creatively and artistically brilliant. It's what happens when you take real human artists and tell them to go nuts. That sketchbook side story, the art is jaw-dropping in its simplicity, but peak in its ingenuity, and hands down, my wife's favorite. The score is equally a masterpiece of varying soundscapes, from the deep bass and synth of the sci-fi worlds to the more classical strings, chimes, and choral works of the fantasy worlds. This score is the gift that keeps giving. Keen listeners will even notice callbacks to various media of the past, like a brief Mortal Kombat riff, or a musical phrase lifted from Lion King that gives you that subconscious gut punch from your childhood that matches the swelling emotions on the screen at the time. The musical Easter eggs are one of the coolest features in this game. And yes, there are also visual Easter eggs everywhere. This game is a love letter to gaming in general and 80s 90s kids in specific. And the music is a major component of that nostalgia, while also being solidly its own thing. This music team is a trio of extremely clever composers who clearly have a passion for both music and pop culture history. The sound effects are so seamlessly integrated that you get immersed into the story and worlds. A truly incredible effort by the sound design team. The basic premise is you are aspiring young writers, Mio and Zoe, named for the daughters of studio owner Joseph Ferris. You are visiting a new tech company that is supposed to let you turn your ideas into written works with just a thought, allowing them to quickly and easily become published authors. Alas, that's not exactly how things go down. You end up stuck in a simulation together, and that's when things hit the fan. You both move between Mio's sci-fi stories and Zoe's fantasy stories using glitches in the Matrix, Easter egg, as you try to escape the simulation. Throughout the journey, Mio learns more about Zoe's background and why she writes fantasy, and Zoe learns more about Mio and her infatuation with sci-fi. This goes way deeper than the genre preferences, and you're going to love how the story unfolds and builds into something far greater than the sum of its parts. I did not expect this emotional roller coaster, though I probably should have after Hazelight's last game. And shout out to all the Easter eggs from their previous titles and the greater gaming history as well. Not only were the graphical artists on their A-game, but the writers were clearly given carte blanche to tell whatever stories popped into their minds. In addition to the overarching narrative bringing two strangers together to fight for their stories, there are side stories you'll play that are exceptionally unique and also generally tied to a point in one character's past. The pig side story, without question, was the most hilarious gameplay of my life. The snowboarding side story was my absolute favorite, and all those hours put into 1080 on N64 in high school finally got put to good use. The writers held nothing back, everything goes, and it all makes sense in the context of the stories these two authors have written or conceived of through their lives. Utterly genius storytelling that visually allows us to understand their pasts. The combat changes so much throughout the game that it's hard to define it. Sometimes you're clobbering things with swords, and other times you're shooting laser guns from motorcycles. Sometimes you're a pinball hitting bombs, and then there's a 2D side-scroller combat and the isometric dragon combat. It's a blast to constantly change it up and keep your brain active while playing. The bosses are also insane. I don't want to give spoilers, so in very broad terms, the bosses are co-op challenges that involve killing mechs and monsters and other things using the various tools each chapter provides you with. The co-op felt great in the vast majority of boss fights. Inputs were instantaneous, and usually the sequence of actions needed to damage the bosses were easy to figure out with just a small amount of critical thinking. That doesn't mean they were easy to execute. Some bosses took us quite a few tries to get both of our parts correct. Nowhere near Souls level attempts, but 5 to 10 tries for a couple of them. On the test chamber boss, I had to swap controllers with my wife to aim and shoot while flying through the air because she had trouble with her character moving uncontrolled while she also had to aim. That's actually the only time the more casual of the two of us needed assistance. This is a game anyone can play if they're willing to learn and improve. And there are extra difficulty settings in the accessibility menu per player, so you can set it to your personal skill level. Then you get to the final boss. I heard someone in a review over the summer say the final sequence of the game felt like the other most fun parts dialed up to 11, and I think that's a fantastic way to describe it. Take everything you loved about the previous parts of the game, throw it in a blender, dial it to 11, and then play the resulting unbelievably unique final boss challenge that is basically an entire level's worth of content in and of itself. I've never had an experience in any game like that final boss. This is the creativity major AAA studios are lacking, or more aptly that shareholders of major studios are preventing. Hazelight gave us some of the most compelling combat I've ever had the pleasure to experience. Honestly, I don't have a ton to say about the controls because they made sense and worked well. I never much thought about them while I was playing. They just worked. Gameplay was extremely smooth and reactive to the inputs. Even when I had a week or more between sessions, controls were so intuitive I could pick it back up and be jumping and sliding and running and gunning in minutes. I will say I had to invert the flying controls, which can also be set separately per player, and that was hugely helpful because Star Fox, I am not. So yeah, the only time I had issues with the controls in the game, it was a skill issue. And I fully admit my wife beat that part for me. What a team. With no permanent skills or level ups or even weapons, systems are running pretty lean, and that makes this great for a casual player to pick up and play. The primary system really is the compulsory co-op, though some will make a good argument for being a mechanic, not a system. I'm not bothered by such semantics, so that's what we're reviewing here. And as a sidebar, if you play online, this is both cross-platform and only one of you needs to own it. This is one of the most consumer-friendly games in existence. So as I was saying, the strength of the co-op gameplay is integral to the story and playability of the game. I'm pleased to report that not only were the characters unique in their archetypes, but their individual skills and mechanics were unique to that character as well. The sci-fi nerd was more likely to drive mechs or use tech to control things, while the fantasy nerd was more likely to use creatures or shoot while along for the ride. And their individual skills complemented each other even as they acquired different powers and equipment level to level. We loved how their outfits changed each chapter to support their new roles, and the consistency of the details, like Zoe having circles and Mio having triangles on all their outfits, even if it's subtle. The design choices they made to keep the characters from feeling too much alike, and how they created ways for them to work together while using completely different skill sets was truly the highlight of the game design. The interface was almost non-existent. Occasionally button prompts would pop up, but overall you were expected to learn and remember your buttons and actions. This could be problematic if playing several games at once, or taking very long breaks between sessions, but it's a minor inconvenience at best, and it is more than worth the hassle for this piece of art. The only other piece of interface is the health bars for your bosses. These are small and positioned at the very top of the screen. Instead of a health bar for your characters, the screen starts to turn red from the outside in to show you damage amount. Too much red, you disintegrate and pop back in where you started. If this happens during combat, you have to do a press a button minigame to get back in while your partner stays alive. As long as one of you is alive, you're progressing. Where I tended to have the greater skill in combat and fights, my wife is the queen of platforming and pulled my scrub ass along with her quite a few times. The other bit of interface is the game menu. It's sleek and futuristic in keeping with the cool new thoughts to book tech being tested. Since the game has an autosave feature, you can also expect a completely blink and you miss it autosave icon in the bottom right. We used that a lot to find good stopping points to not lose progress when we were done for the day. So, what's the grade? Graphics and sounds are pure artistry from the design and sound teams, and they cannot be commended enough. A all the way. Story is the most important part of any Hazelight game, and enjoying it with another player at your side makes it all the more powerful an experience. Another A without question. Combat is so varied and so smooth that you will wish there was more of it as you leap and glide your way through all the platforming. Combat gets a solid A as well. Controls were so good, I have no comment, and that's a hugely important component of gameplay, so controls also get an A. Despite being a system-light game, the compulsory co-op system is fun and flawlessly executed, so yet another A is awarded here. The almost lack of interface during gameplay allowed for immersion like few other games I've played in my years, and the menu was so clean and easy to move around quickly in, so interface is another easy A. But was it fun? Emphatically, yes. Is it good for casuals? Another strong yes, though extreme casuals may struggle in a handful of parts, and swapping controllers around might provide a more accessible challenge if the struggle gets too hard. Are there microtransactions? None at all. Multiplayer? Yes? Absolutely required here, though only one of you needs to own it. Given some complex platforming sequences, but overall inability to die for good so long as your partner stays up, plus generous checkpoints, I'm honestly leaning into a crunchy rating of Super Mario, maybe Mario 64. For experienced gamers, this is a cakewalk vacation from harder stuff, and for casuals, it's a fun challenge. What else can I say about Split Fiction other than it absolutely knocked our socks off? Hazelight has done it again, a superb 10 out of 10. They already have another super secret project in the works, and I seriously can't wait for that day one purchase. They have earned my trust and loyalty by consistently delivering the best gameplay paired with incredibly heartfelt stories. I don't know what more can be said besides, it's perfection. I've had a hiccup with computers involving a broken fan in my laptop and a new Mac Mini to learn to use, so this video is running later than planned. I don't know how long until my next review will drop, but it will be a shorter one. It'll still give you a lot to chew on, though. You'll get that joke when you see it. If you don't want to miss that one, make sure to subscribe, and if you enjoyed this review, go ahead and drop a like as well, please. Thanks again for hanging out with me on this wild ride through Hazelight's wacky subconscious. As always, make sure to try new games, slay that backlog, and cheers to you all.